How you doing? You want some water? Um, so getting back to why you joined the army, and so you joined in 42,
Yeah.
and
And I went in, I also got right away when I went in, put with the, what do they call it? Words.
You wanted to get in the Air Corps.
You know, well, the first thing, I wanted to get into the Air Force. I went over to the Naval Air Station in Minneapolis, took the exams over there, and then they said, we'll notify you for a call up for come and get your uniform. So I don't know, a couple, 3-4 weeks, and I get the call to go over there. And the guy says, well, we missed one thing on your physical. He said, it'll only take a minute. And this was colorblind test.
mm-hmm.
And I failed it.
Oh,
And so instead of being in the Air Force, I went right away and joined the Army. And when I went into the Army, they take your Army classification. You take the test for that, and they put me, being that I'd been at Bethel and stuff, and they put me with the chaplain when I first went in, as the chaplain's assistant.
wow!
And
Didn't know that.
so I said, no, I don't think, I said I wanted to come into the Army to be in the fighting. They said, oh, we got just a place for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll put you in the 90th Suicide Battalion.
The what?
90th Suicide Battalion,
Which stood for?
which stood for any reconnaissance group in the armored force. They just, he said, there's 100% casualties in it, the ones that went before.
And what did you think when you signed
I
up for that?
don't know, it didn't mean much to me at my age then, you know.
How old were you?
Oh, hell, what was I? 19, I guess.
Did you want to be a tank commander, or did
No,
you just?
I didn't. I
just did
didn't have any goals, so I didn't even know what one was, you know. First you gotta put in your 90 days of like everybody else. And then you get a classification number. And first they were trying to get me to go to OCS, Officers Candidate School. And I didn't want, I don't know why, I just didn't care to go to any more schools, I guess. So then,
What was the camp like? Those 90 days.
my mother had her come down there at the end.
I wasn't part of the camp.
No. No, the camp, what you do is you start out the first come in there, the siding where the train pulls in, and they hand you a mess kit that's in cosmoline grease and oil, you know, that's from World War I guess. You had to clean that in the sand alongside of the siding of the track. Clean this thing out.
It's your first day.
The first day, just getting off the train. And then they threw this stuff in it, everybody took a look at it.
Food.
Food, yeah, and threw it back into the GI can there. And the mess sergeant was there, he didn't say anything, you know, everybody threw that in there. Then he picked out a couple of guys, pick that can up, he says, set it over here on the scale. And they put it on the scale, weighed it, and says, now that's how much less food you get tomorrow.
First
Then
day.
you were for 90 days out in the field.
Doing.
Started out 3 miles a day, and the next day it's 6 miles, and then a week goes by of 6 milers, and then 9 milers, and then you got up there to 12, and then a couple of 12s, and then you're up to 18, and then up to 20, and then up to 25 miles.
You ran 25 miles?
Not ran, you went, walked
Walked.
with full field, 60 pounds on your back, and your rifle.
25 miles. How long did
25
that?
miles.
How long did that take walking?
7 hours.
7 hours. What'd you guys do for 7 hours?
Walk.
You didn't talk, sing songs?
Hey, by the time you got halfway, your tongue was hanging out. How am I ever going to get back? But after a while, then when they did those later on, you went through an obstacle course on the way back. Then you went, if you want to hold a rating in the outfit, if a rating means whether you were a corporal or a sergeant or anything like that, you had to belong to a certain, called a Tiger platoon back then. That was the name. And every Saturday, you had to fight somebody your own weight and height.
That's how you gained rank, by fighting?
Well, no, it was just conditioning. And I remember I got in there with this guy that was a pro fighter, you know. I knew him. He was down the maintenance department. He's just playing around with me there for a little while, and he says, "Hey, Roy, mix it up a little bit." He says, "You'll be in there a long time." He says, "When do you want to go to sleep?"
What'd you say?
The old common. Never saw it coming. So later on, when we were overseas, he was a messenger on a motorcycle, and he'd come out our way every once in a while. "Hey, Roy, you want to go a couple rounds?" He's a nice guy. We had another one that was a fighter too, Barney Ross, I think he was. But that's what training was. I mean, you trained like that, and then to hold a rate, you had to do all these special things. All the other guys had the weekend off. You had to do some of that.
So how did they sort them out at the end of 90 days? Did everybody pass?
By the end of 90 days, you pretty well knew everybody. I mean, the people in charge knew just about the abilities of everybody. Then I got into trouble a couple of times because my old
Doing what?
West 7th Street come back. I got broke. In other words, I got the stripes torn off.
Why? What did you do?
Well, I saw the guy that burnt up my guitar, so I went after him. He was the first sergeant. So then I got company punishment. I had to dig a hole 6 by 6 by 6 with a steel helmet. Fill it back up again.
How long did that take?
Well, that was another story. So, the lieutenant comes along and says, telling me to hurry up. And I says, "Sure, in all due respect, according to Army regulations, you could have me do this, but you can't tell me how fast."
What did he say?
Oh, you're a guardhouse lawyer too, huh? Mouth gets you in trouble.
And what else did you do that got you in trouble?
Well, we didn't have respect for Captain McKinney, who turned the tank over, and we all stood there looking at him and didn't bother to go down to see if he got killed or not. Colonel come along and, "Why don't you men help him out?" I said, "We don't like him."
You said that?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we got company punishment again. He says, "All right, gentlemen." He says, "I'll see you out on the parade grounds tomorrow morning. Full field and gas mask." And he was a guy about 6'6", and his knees came up to about my chin, I think. And he said, gets out, he says, "Okay, gas mask on." And then double time around the parade ground, 4 miles. you try to breathe in there, and just suck that mask. And they go, we learned our lesson.
When did you know you were going to be a tank commander? When did they give you that assignment?
Well, when we were in maneuvers up in Tennessee, we went on maneuvers like regular, like you were in combat maneuvers, you know. It's moving whole combat commands along and learning how to maintain intervals and cross control and all this kind of stuff. And then you have what you call a problem. You're going to work this problem out. And you're given your specific side and the other team is given their side of the problem. That one is, I never forgot, I went through. He said, you do it like you're actually in combat. Okay. So instead of coming out where they thought I was going to come out, I come busting out of a tobacco shed and blew the thing all apart and came out, captured him. Then they had the claims officer had to come and pay for that stuff.
Did you get in trouble for wrecking the building?
Or did you get credit for doing something innovative?
Well, no, they didn't like that too well. Cost money. But they had to admit that I did it like I would do in combat. So, that was it. But that's how they figured out. And then they broke me again for something. And oh, I know what it was. This guy from the old army, we were his cadre, and he says to me, walk like a man if you're one or not, or something like that to me. And I went after him.
What do you mean you went after him?
Well, go take it from him.
Does that mean you fought him, Grandpa?
Yeah.
Is that what that means?
It wasn't much of a fight.
Who won?
The captain come out. He called me in there and he says, what did you have to do that in front of me for? He said, he didn't like this guy at all because this guy was from the old army.
What's the old army?
Well, old army. He was in the army before the war.
Okay.
And he had a rating in the old army. You were rated by Congress. And they were the only one that could break you. So even the captain couldn't break this guy. When you say break, denote him in grade.
Mm-hmm.
So he loved the fact that I took him on, but he still had to give me company punishment, demote me again.
You got in trouble a lot, Grandpa.
No, for good reasons though.
Yeah, Josh, I was married to him.
When did you got married when you were 19 before you went to the war
Yeah.
then? Were you guys pen pals?
No. Oh yeah, in the army.
Oh, did I write to him? Lots of letters.
Do you still have them?
No.
You always
I
learn
have
to
one
burn
in my
letters.
recipe box.
You always learn to burn letters if you can.
I have one in my recipe box after Judy was born.
Yeah.
Was Judy born while you were away?
No.
When did you get back, right? Okay.
No, he came back and he said he never wanted to have children because he had seen so many hungry children in Europe. Thought they didn't need children.
You had a lot of children.
Mhm.
So, what was it like being under Patton? Of the other commanders that you didn't like, did you like being under him, or what was that like?
Well, you figured there was somebody that knew what he was doing and that he was up there where you were. So,
He admires Patton.
yeah, you know. You had some of these other guys, I don't think they knew what side of the road they were on even. We had a captain, and during training I thought this guy is going to be a whiz, you know. And I'm in the same march that we were going on and just think, in fact I was back second tank. And the first shells started coming in, he froze. He actually froze. He just sat there. And finally a non-com had to go up and tell him, Captain, what do you want to do? What are you going to do? He couldn't do anything. He just absolutely froze. And the regular soldiers took over the rest of it.
What was Patton like in combat? Did you ever?
Oh, he's a bridge. I can still remember the bridge at Thionville. I think it was. He's standing down there. He's got his helmet on with his stars on it and his pearl handle revolvers on the side. Get them blankety blank tanks across that thing, you know. And he's down there. We're being shelled. The airplanes are bombing us. And he's standing right out there. That's what he was good at, getting things moving, you know.
He was in the midst of it all the time.
So, he didn't believe he could get killed, I guess. I don't know what he thought. And we would take mud and put on our patches and stuff so that we just look like any other soldiers, you know, looking for the leader to knock him off all the time, you know.
Did you ever have any interaction with him? Patton?
Pat, no. I had one time when he said the recon, they wanted him up some town way up by morning. And he says, if I didn't think it could be done, I wouldn't be asking. He said, of course, we thought it was our ending, you know.
So did he have like a little meeting with you before you had this?
Yeah.
And you guys just said, all right, let's do it?
Yeah. Gonzo! Banzai, yeah, get going. So, but that was the only time for that. But I've seen him other times, like at the bridge and at a road crossing, and when people were all milling around, not getting going, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He was really bad for officers that weren't doing their jobs. But I personally saw him break one guy because he couldn't keep the proper interval on a march. See, when you were properly trained, mothers hears this from me a lot of times. They just hate it when I sit at a stop sign or maybe just 4 or 5 cars ahead of you. In the Army, you might have 50 in line. And the hands go up, and hands come down, and everything moves as one unit. And you sit at a stop sign, one guy gets going, and the other one is putting lipstick on or something, and then you get going. As the boy, if George was here, we'd sure see things different. But we had it trained so that you kept your proper interval between tanks, trucks, or anything like this. And that when it was properly done, you could move 2 units crossing each other like this here, you know, without being interrupted. But it takes discipline to do it.
What were living conditions like at night in the war? What did you
Sleep on the back of a tank,
Mm-hmm.
dig a hole in the ground.
Was it ever very hard to sleep?
Oh, it's all, I've gone sometimes 2 and 3 days without sleeping. If you were in an area where something's going on all the time, you know. But like up at the Battle of Bulge in that area, snow, you didn't have winter clothing. All we had was a tarpaulin that was for the tank coverage, you know, when you were working on a tank or something. And we'd fold that back, and then whoever wasn't on guard would get in there and then fold that tarp back over them on the back. They call the sponson of the tank. It's the engine compartment. Right? There's no heat. The tank you freeze because it sucks the air in from outside in. And so that in the fighting compartment you don't have all the cordite smoke from the ammunition. That gives you a real headache.
What was it like being on the inside of a tank? It's such
Well, it
small.
wouldn't be for mother, I can assure you. If you had claustrophobia, you're really in bad shape. So I was, hey, you had a little thing on a spring chair, maybe about this round, that you could go up and have your head out, or you go down and pull the tank over top of you. And then the cannon recoil came right alongside of you here, like this. So, and then the gunner sat down below where he could look through telescope sights down there. And I would feed the ammunition into the cannon. And what you would do is you keep this arm out of the way, you get that round down there in the breeching, and then you slide it forward like that, and then he hits the trigger at the same time, and the recoil comes back like this here, you know. So then along with the cannon, you have a coaxially mounted machine gun, which is on the same sights as the cannon. And so what you would do a lot of times with that to get the ranging is fire that machine gun. And it comes out, every third one is a tracer. You can see it going out. So it's just like squirting a hose.
Okay.
So you get that towards where you want your target and then hit the big cannon. Good deal. Then we had Thompson submachine guns as a personal weapon. And we had hand grenades. And I had a mortar, base plate and mortar on the left tank fender. And then we had lots of picked up extra weapons around. I had a 50 caliber machine gun welded in on the front here on top of the tank. So you had the firepower of an infantry company in that tank for firepower. And then in the cannon you had what you call HE, high explosive shells. You had white phosphorus shells in there. You had canister, which is the same as you use in a 12 gauge shotgun, like, you know, a little BB ball like that. So when they come out, they spread like this here.
What was one of the more scarier times of the war for you?
Well, one time when they had a frontal attack, and I was outposting just alone with my tank. You were told to outpost till something come up, and then you could leave, you know. And I had a frontal tank from a German outfit, and behind him was a SS pushing them, so that they, you know, were like a rock in a hard place. They couldn't stop because they get shot from the SS from behind, and we just kept shooting till our guns just practically burnt out. And the 50 caliber was starting to go like this. The barrel was burnt out from shooting it, and we were throwing hand grenades out of the tank.
So it was just you four against how many?
Oh, I don't know how many it was. That was the first time they calling you American swine and everything else is charging.
Do you think it was around like 50 men or
Oh yeah, more than that.
more than that? 100?
Yeah,
And it was just you four in your tank.
well, that was enough.
And
We did. Well, that's one time they just looked like cordwood out there, mowed them down. And there were people just like me, you know, they were there, and probably most of them didn't want to be there.
what was that like for you?
Well, makes you're not very hungry for a while, I'll tell you. But I didn't have too many of those. I had one that was worse than that, though, and I went down an old I should say, Roman road that went along. And then on each side of this Roman road was a German outfit on one side and an American, and a certain amount of them would get killed with bayonet and whatnot, and then they would sliver back down into their holes on each side of the road. And I had to drive down through the middle of this thing. So I had humans and tank tracks spread all over, you know.
So the Germans were on the side of the road?
Both were Americans and Germans, and both of them shot at me because they were running over their buddies. So,
Hold on, so what did you have to do?
go down this road.
And there were men on the road?
Oh, they're dead were laying on the road.
And why'd you have to go down the road?
Well, they had an objective at the other end to get into position to try to help this outfit out to get out of there, but
And so why were both sides shooting at you?
God, those are friends.
That you were driving on?
Yeah. I think that's probably what happened to the Marines here in this last deal. That probably one of their friends got killed by some civilian standing there, and they went ape afterwards. But I could understand it, but most people can't understand it. So.
How'd you cope with that?
Well, a lot of people did. That's the only way I could say it. I had a tank driver that when we got hit, and he says, don't let him get me, don't let him get me," and that's all he was yelling, and he's still yelling it, I guess. He flipped out. But there is a strange thing about that, is that everybody's scared, but be able to control your scared and keep functioning. But that isn't everybody. You don't know who it's going to be until you're there. I mean, I saw a lot of guys that were bragging what they were going to do when they got over there and whatnot. One of them shot his hand off, put his hand out in front of the machine gun and shot his hand off so that he could get out of there. He was court-martialed because we were in a firefight at the time, and so that disgraceful action in the face of the enemy. So,
Where was the firefight?
well, I don't know, someplace in Germany. Then I remember Andy Slanko, the guy in our outfit, and I had to post a guard out there in this place, and then all night long, Roy, slithering up. What's wrong? He just wanted a little company. So didn't want to be there alone. And I understood that. But there, one time, remember I said you got jobs like they didn't want to lose more than one tank. I went along the Moselle River on one side. There's a bank down to the river here and another bank up like this here. No way to get off the road at all. And the Germans on the other side, they're in pillboxes and whatnot over there.
What's a pillbox?
A concrete enclosure made for just so that you could shoot out of it, that they can't get you. And I was supposed to go up that road and contact an engineering battalion that was trying to get across the river and see how they were doing. Well, when I got up there, there wasn't anybody alive left in this engineering battalion. But I went, because the Germans were up on the hill with a whole bunch of tanks shooting down on them. So I went swishing around back and forth in them as fast as I could go to see if there's anybody alive. And I got back on the road and it sounded like a boiler factory inside of that tank from being shot at all the way back. They shot everything off the tank. Like you had your musette bags and your aerial for your radio and all that stuff, that was all shot off. And if you didn't move fast enough, some of those 20 millimeters are concentrated enough they would go through the tank, you know. It was a light reconnaissance tank.
In other words, you just kept moving.
Well, he kept moving. My driver would go full blast, and then he slam on the brakes. About that time, an 88 shell would go front to front and explode, and then he'd stop on the gas again and would go.
So you guys got out of there then?
Got out of there.
How long? Like how long was that fire
Oh,
on? Probably.
good 40 minutes or so.
You're driving around.
Well, you had to go up and go back.
Wow.
So I never forgot that one either. Because we said that time too, well, this is it, you know. That's
So what-
all you used to say when you got an assignment like that. This is it.
So what was it like inside the tank for 40 minutes
Oh.
with those 3 other guys?
There's just a bunch of noise in there. Bullets hitting it all over. So,
How'd you maintain sanity within the group if you were in charge of them to keep
they
them
got the
doing?
intercom, throat mics,
Uh-huh. What would you say?
not much. Keep going. Do what you're doing. We're making it. So, but it's luck, you know. Let's say you're going down there, and there's up on that hill is an 88. That's an 88 millimeter armor piercing shell. It could go in one side of that tank and out the other, and you know he's up there, and he's tracking you, and he's leading you, and everything else, doing what he has to do to get you. But it's a matter of you stopping quick and starting quick. Sets him off, so his timing is off. But let's say you stop just as the time he was on you, it'd been all over. You don't know that. You say anytime you hear one of those shells, you know it's no problem. It's the one you don't hear. But we had some crazy guys in our outfit too. We had one guy, the name of an Italian kid, Ficera, and he would blacken himself at night, and he wouldn't take a gun with him all. He'd take with him as a knife, and he would sneak out at night to get a German. He's nuts. Pathological killer, we called him. And he would bring back ears. But there were times I did things that, at the time, didn't know if it was right or wrong, because I had this town, we were on one side of the, these old towns are big squares, they call them, and they usually have a fountain or something in the middle of it, And on this side, this woman was crying and everything, and said that she had a baby over there in that place, and she had one in the baby buggy here. And I said, well, you can go. We won't shoot at you. You go ahead, and you tell those people over there that they come out and give up. We won't shoot them. But just by doing that a little bit like that, the Germans over there decided that I wasn't that bad after all, and they come out with their white flag. Otherwise, we might have gone in and some of my guys have got killed and they'd have got killed. There wouldn't be any advantage in it. They'd have got taken anyway. But you never know that when you try to do something like that.
Do you want me to go by myself, or do you go with me?
Pardon?
Do you want to go with me? I have to be there at 5:30.
Yeah, I'll try to get through. We'll have to call this off, I guess. You got more than you expected.
No, there's more still, but I'll have to send David or my dad to continue.
No, I don't think of anything else. It's more a repetition of the things I've talked about that keep happening at different times.
Well, what other things besides you said that you didn't know at the time if they were right, but you did? What did you mean by that?
You're forced to fight, aren't you?
To give somebody a break, should we call it, take the woman to listen to her problem and do something. And another time I can remember when we had somebody, we had called the people, asked them that they'd give up, that we would make sure that they got taken back and everything like that there. And then one character in our outfit shot at one of them, and then after that we were spent a good part of the day fighting there just because that one character.
And he could understand what's happened with the Marines over here too. He said, you just don't know what it's like when you're forced to fight like that.
That's over in Iraq right now.
Yeah.
You're forced to kill.
It's easy to judge from sitting home, you know. Like I used to have a saying, there was a guy named Baron Munchausen on the radio when I was a kid. And somebody be ridiculing what he had done, and the answer that he would give was, "Was you there, Charlie?" That's what he would say. And it stuck with me. Yeah, there's a lot of difference if you were there. You know.
There are a lot of men in the military, but a pretty low percentage are actually doing the fighting.
Sure. When I was in, there were 12 million in service. And maybe 2 million did any fighting, you know. The rest is the service supply and all the rest that goes with it. We read, or I did already anyway, South Pacific by Michener. And you saw pretty much of that, guys getting stuck on some island someplace and there for years on a lousy job in a sweaty, hot tropics, you know. Some of them commit suicide. Some of them do crazy things.
So he was glad he had been in Europe.
Yeah. I don't think I could hack living in a jungle.
Was you there, Charlie?
I used to listen to that program and get a big bang out of it. Somebody be ridiculing somebody else. Yeah, well, shoot there, Charlie. So sometimes you gotta sit back and think, yeah, I didn't like what happened, but I wasn't there. Can't judge it that well.
You know, a book that we read in our book club that you'd get a lot out of was Poland by Michener. And it tells of how Poland as a country has been. The neighbors around would slice it up, but a big part of it was how the Germans treated them when they went in there. And you learn a lot about what was happening in Europe and how they exterminated all those Jewish people, you know.
There's another comment I think is worth saying, is that lots of time you hear somebody, oh, I was 3 years in the service, or something like that, you know. But really what counts is what happens in 10 or 15 minutes. If you were a machine gunner up on the line and you were pulled up there where there is fighting going on, the average machine gunner lived about 15 minutes before somebody found where he was and knocked him out. So he might be in the service only a couple months and he's dead already. And somebody else could be in there 2 years, you know. So it is where you are and what you're doing and under what circumstances. So the amount of time in the service doesn't really mean much. It's where did you spend that time? So. There is the end of the story. Or the beginning, one or the other.
I'll take the beginning. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
But from your point of view, that I'd like to get across is that you walk towards a problem, that you owe something to your family, whether you think you do or not, There's always somebody had to put in a lot of time and effort to get you to the point where you're at, you know. And I like the fact that you know how to pick your friends, because basically the friends are the ones that usually get you into trouble, not yourself. And then to study for setting aside a part of your time of helping other people rather than helping yourself. And that's the only thing that's rewarding in the end. Actually, I found in my life that it's sure more rewarding to help somebody than to be helped.
Well, I think Josh is trying to do that now.
Well, it is. But you want to think of family, think of your mother and dad, you know. They all have problems. We had problems. There's some degree of loyalty to your family. Any comments? Mother is still running.
I don't want to put him on the tape. If you come up with questions or
All right. Oh no. There we go. That's not working. Okay.
Got the red light on.
So yesterday Ben said that you had remembered some things that you wanted to maybe add before I continue asking you questions.
Well, something that we hadn't talked about, some of the boyhood things, and the main thing that I was thinking about was the earliest recollections I have is before kindergarten. And I remember at my great-grandmother's house during the Depression, and I got sick there, and nobody really knew what it was. I wouldn't be able to stand up for some reason or other. And I heard the old folks outside talking outside the door, and nobody said get a doctor or take him to a hospital. They said he'll either make it or he won't, and that's the way it was during the Depression. Nobody, hardly ever, unless you had a lot of money, went to see a doctor or a hospital. And that was one of my earliest recollections.
I guess you made it.
I made it. Then there are other things that during the Depression you made your own fun. There weren't any things bought for you. The only thing that we really had as a community was a basketball and a football, which just sort of appeared in the, if you had a street game, go out and play in the street. And most of the times, then we had when I got a little older, we were sponsored by a grocery store for called the West 7th Street Wildcats. And we played football in a league, not football, or basketball in a league, and traveled around the city. And I had a friend, Bill Cogan, who was the best man at my wedding, and his family, his dad had a job and had a car, so that was an interesting thing. We never had a car in our family, and the first car I ever had was after that I really was an automobile was after I got out of the service. But the recreation usually for us kids at night, after the games were outside, we would play Monopoly. That's what I always remember. It had always stuck in the back of my mind is that if you want to get ahead, get a good piece of property.
Ah,
So,
so what about that car? What'd you
well, we
Because
didn't
you
do
had a-
very well with cars. The first car, new car we got, Judy was born then, and had to sell the car to pay for the doctor bills. So,
We sent back the car.
so it was a case of sending the baby back or the car. So,
Judy said she made that decision.
yeah.
What about Bill Cogan's car though? What did you do with that?
What was it?
You said he had a car when
No,
you
he
were-
didn't. His father did.
His father had it.
Yeah. I can remember old Model A.
But you did have some vehicle when you came to see me before we were married.
Oh, yeah. He had the Cadillac. We went down on the Chevrolet dealer on University Avenue looking for a car for the quartet to travel in. They said he saw this big bomb sitting there, looked like Dillinger's car. And it had the glass between the windows and the chauffeur-driven type thing, you know. And they wanted $200 for it, and it wouldn't run. So we hauled it down to an old guy's garage that did his garage work at home, and we tore the front end off of it and got a timing chain, put it in it, and ran like a charm from then on.
Oh, wow.
It had big 700 tires on it, 8-ply tires.
Was $200 a lot of money?
Well, it was a lot, but for, you know, a car of that type, it was.
Did you all chip in, pay for it?
Hmm?
Did you all chip in?
Yeah, we all, you know, 4 of us. We earned the money singing, so we called it the Old Ark. We used to go down the road singing the Old Ark to Moon. And we went, we were sponsored by Northwestern College,
Bible school.
and we traveled around the Midwest through the Dakotas and Iowa. And we would send out our brochure to churches that wanted to see if they wanted us to come. That was a lot of fun.
How long did you do that?
Oh, for a whole year, I guess, wasn't it ever better? Then the war came along. I joined up in the service.
Did you join up alone or with any friends?
Alone.
How did you come to that decision back then?
Well, didn't want to be a burden on somebody else, I guess. I was going to Bethel at the time and staying with Hanks. And I wasn't doing that well, actually. It wasn't my cup of tea. They had a lot of fun. I guess I told you the stories about Bethel and that the other day, so.
You didn't tell them about putting gas in that Cadillac.
How much
That's one
was
thing you'd
gas?
like was get
How much was the gas for that Cadillac?
15 cents a gallon. 15 cents was hard to come by.
And what would you do at the top of the hill?
Well, yeah, I think we talked about that before.
Did he tell you? No, he didn't. That's why I.
Well, Randolph Hill, I don't know if you've been over on Randolph Avenue and where it goes down to 7th Street. Well, Randolph and Snelling is where she lived up there, so I would park the car up there and when we was through with the evening entertainment at her house, and I would get the car started enough to start moving and coast all the way back down to where I live. So, I guess theoretically I wasn't supposed to be using it, I don't know. But then I take it to high school, and that was really something, you know. To drive up in this big Dillinger wagon, and her brother goes home and says, my sister's going with a gangster. But probably I did look like a gangster back then, I don't know.
There was that time that we were singing in Wisconsin.
Up
It
in
was
Milltown,
freezing
yeah.
weather, and that little car, why don't you tell 'em about that?
Well, it was in the middle of winter. I met him in January. It was an old beat-up Chevy, and it was overheating and wouldn't run. And we didn't get back till, I don't think, till 2 in the morning or something like that. Her mother was waiting,
All the way home.
so she was praying. Everybody
The
else
quartet was
was,
praying.
because she
about
kicked
Grandma's
guys out of the house.
reaction. What would happen when we came in the door at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Wow.
Because she chased all the boys away.
So what did happen?
I got fed.
We came in the door, and she said she was sitting in the corner by that telephone, the way she would on the register, on the radiator. And she called out and said, there are beans in the oven.
Oh my.
Yeah, I can remember Cal got chased out of there and he went there. I don't know. So I think it helped to be able to sing a little bit. What do you think we didn't cover, son?
Ooh. What was it like when Pearl Harbor happened?
Well, I remember Pearl Harbor because I was getting ready to go to church with the Hanks. And we heard it on the radio morning about the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
What was that like?
Well, most people couldn't believe it to start with. And I can't really remember it because we didn't have television or anything back then, so all we got was reports on the radio the rest of the day about how many ships had been sunk. It was later on that I learned about Billy Mitchell being court-martialed because they thought he was a nut about telling about Pearl Harbor that would happen and that the Japanese would attack it. That was back in the 30s. And he had demonstrated that you could sink a battleship with an airplane. And all the old line admirals didn't want to hear about that at all, you know. So the old saying about most generals and admirals are always fighting the last war, not the new one.
So what was it like in the country though? The just emotions.
Well, Mother would know more about it. It was like here. I went in the service, but I remembered that it was gas rationing and food rationing. Everybody worked and pitched in compared to what you have now. It's usually, my feeling is that people figure how much money they're going to make rather than. I had one experience when I came home from the war. I was on a streetcar going up to where the church is. This was New Year's Eve service. And there were two women sitting up ahead of me discussing things, and one of them said it was too bad the war ended because they could have had their fur coat paid for if it lasted a little longer. So that was some of the attitude I heard of people. Greediness is never gone. And then when we got out, we lived in a one-room apartment, not apartment, upstairs of somebody's house with kitchen privilege to be able to cook. And of course, Mother always remembers the woman telling us when we left there, "You'll never live this cheap again." And she was right.
$5 a week.
$5 a week.
So,
$5 a week.
and we went through the old thing of beat up cars, and junkers. When I was going to Dunwoody, I'd have to get out and fix the car in order to go to school. I remember putting my old army overcoat over the top of it to keep it warm, good up during the night, and started a couple of times. Make sure it would go in the morning.
Did you ever have to parachute in?
No,
Anywhere?
I wasn't a paratroop. Was
Ed was,
that Ed? Yeah.
my brother Ed.
And her other brother was, Harry was a Marine, World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And I sang for his wedding, I can remember that. So,
Joe was a sailor, so was Don.
So how soon after Pearl Harbor did you go in the war? Did you go?
well, I went in 42. Pearl Harbor was in 41.
9 months.
So did the country, what was the feeling of the country then? Was there anger or just like,
Well, there wasn't any preparedness. Just prior to World War II, Lindbergh and them were talking about isolationism, and half the country. It was fairly soon after World War I when you think about it. World War I in 18, and this was, 41.
What's isolationism?
Well, didn't believe in getting involved in European wars. But it so happened that it was global war. It wasn't only European, it was Asia is in it also. And we had a lot of things going here in this country. They had the German Bund, they called it. It was an organization for German people. It would be basically what we call a fifth column activity now.
What's the German Bund? Just
The German organization for Deutschland, über alles, Germany overall. But now, if anything else you can think of, there's a lot of things happening with making a living.
with
We learned a lot about what happened before we got in the war by reading the book on the Roosevelts, on Franklin Roosevelt, and came to appreciate so much of what he had to do in order to lead the country. And
Against the, in a
Oh, we-
democracy, you have isolationism happening, and you have the leadership trying to accomplish something with a war going on. Just like now, about half the people are against something, half the people are for it.
Do you still have this jacket?
I was wondering where the thing is, the battle jacket, but I don't even know where the stuff that was on it.